Hey everyone, Matt Williams here with another Photoshop tutorial, and today it's nearly Christmas, so I figured let's make a Christmas themed text effect. But instead of doing the standard happy tinsely text, I decided to go with this sort of creepy branch style typography, which is inspired a little bit from the film Nightmare Before Christmas, which for those of you who have seen will sort of recognise the creepy branch style, which is actually a kids film. It's kind of scary looking. So to achieve this effect, I'm going to be using some different pre-keyed assets like the tree branches and the raven, along with a free brush pack that I'll leave the links for in the description so you can all download it and try for yourself. I'll also be using the Puppet Warp tool, which I think came out in CS5, to shape the text, using some smart objects, layer masks, and some standard filters and different blending options like Bevel and Emboss for the snow effect. Okay, so to start off, we're going to get a new document. I'm going to be using a 1920 by 1080. I'm going to start off with a white background. So the first thing we need to do is make a soft gradient going from the center to the outside. The foreground color I'm using is FA, which is just off white. And the background color that I'm using is a slightly darker grey, but still light. So it's all the D's, so D, 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 D. Click OK. Now we get our gradient tool, which is G and then Shift and G to cycle through the bucket fill and gradient, or you can click and hold on the bucket fill and select it on the left hand side that way. We need to make sure that our foreground to background is selected and that we've got radial gradient, which is the second icon in up here. We need to click somewhere in the middle and click and hold and drag out to the edge of your document, so we've got this nice soft gradient going into the center. It doesn't have to be too accurate in the middle. So now we need to get our textures, so we're going to go File and Place. The first one I'm using is this tree bark texture that I'll leave the links for in the description, as well as the grass that I'm going to be using in a sec. We're going to place that, get the corner transform tool, click and hold, holding Shift and Alt or Option, whichever operating system you're on. We're going to click and drag out to the edge of the document, just so it's covering everything, and hitting Enter. The settings we have on the blending are going to be Overlay, and we're going to bring the opacity down to about 30 just to make it a bit more subtle. Okay, so we need to get our grass now, so we're going to File and Place again, click on the grass layer, which is this one, and we're going to place that. Same thing again, we're going to grab the corner transform tool, holding Shift and Alt or Option. We're going to drag out to the edge of the document, let go and hit Enter. And we're going to do exactly the same settings as the bark, so we're going to blend mode overlay, and we're going to bring the opacity down to about 30. The next thing we need to do is take all of the colour out of these backgrounds. It's pretty much gone with overlay anyway, but just to be sure, we're going to get a black and white layer and just stick that on top so that it takes all of the colour out. Next thing we need to do is put our text in the middle. So we're going to go over and grab our type tool, which is T, or there's a little T on the side here. And we need to go over to our character toolbar. If that's not already there on the tools on the right hand side, you need to go up to Window and then Character, and then that should pop up, so it's a bit easier to find. The text doesn't matter too much what font it in. I'm going to be using Myriad Pro, just because I like the spacing and the sort of style of the letters. I'm also going to be using block capitals, just because the letters are a bit more simple. And we're going to put that roughly in the middle for now. I'm going to make that a dark colour so I can see it, and I'm going to bring it up to about 560 pixels, so that's sort of nice size. We really want to make this so it's centralized, so I'm going to, with this layer selected, holding Command or Control and clicking background, and then we're going to layer align and then vertical centers, and that's going to align it vertically. And then we're going to do the same again, layer align but horizontal centers, and that's going to put it smack bang in the middle. Okay, so now that we've got our main text layer, the next thing we start to do is mold in our branches to the text that we've got. So I'm going to bring a couple of assets under File and Place. I'll leave the links for in the description. These are the original pictures of the trees that I've got. They've got fairly high contrast with the background, so that you can pick them out quite easily with the Magic Wand tool and using layer masks with background replacement. I'll leave the links in for these pictures, but unfortunately I can't give you the ones that I've actually taken the backgrounds out, like this one, because the copyright license says that I can't distribute the modified images. So unfortunately you have to do that yourself, but practice is pretty good for taking backgrounds out. It's always good just to get and do that. There's plenty of videos on how to do that. The first one I'm using is the Sky 2 Edit 2, which is this one, which I've similar one from the desert image, I think, or no, the one with the eagle on, but I've taken a branch that was coming off here There's a couple other branches just so it looks like a bit simpler. I'm going to be bringing this on the S, so we're just going to sort of position this roughly. We're getting a corner transform, holding shift and bringing that in. What I want to have is these branches here where it splits off, sort of intertwining with another one around the middle of the S. So we're going to just position the start, so that's about right. And what we're going to be using is what's called the Puppet Warp tool, which, as I said before, come out in, I think, CS5, could be wrong, but it's under Edit and Puppet Warp, and it works really well on smart layers because it's completely editable. You can go back in and change it again. But how it works is you set these control points. It sort of creates a mesh over the image, and then you sort of click with this pin tool and sort of set the different control points. So you start off with one where you want a position to be fixed, and then you'll just put in another one here. You can put them all in, but I tend to just put one at a time and then sort of work from there. So you can sort of click and drag and move it around. It takes a little bit getting used to, a little bit like the pen tool actually, which takes quite a bit of practicing to get used to that one. So we can just sort of start clicking and adding control points, and as you can see, you can sort of bend it around and manipulate it quite impressively, really. It's a really powerful tool. We're going to end up with a little bit sticking out the top of the S, but don't worry, we're going to mask that out after. And as you'll probably find with other branches, the branches don't quite fit on the letters, so we can just add them in and delete them afterwards. So we can click the tick at the top or hit enter to complete that transformation. But also, being a smart layer, if we look on the right hand side, we've got the smart filters and Puppet Warp, so we can hide that and it'll go back to how it was. Also, if you double click the Puppet Warp tool, it'll bring back up the meshes and all of the transformations you've made. So I want to bring down these branches just a little bit so that they'll be intertwining with another one. And also, when you bring in the other branches, you might want to sort of move things around and just make sure that they're all looking natural. So we're going to OK that. I'm going to bring in another one now just for the bottom of the S, so file and place again, and I'm going to be using this one I think now, which again is similar to this one, except I've just taken a few more branches out. As you can see, I've sort of taken out the edges just so it's more of a straight line. So I'm going to bring this one in, and I want this sort of flat trunk of the tree to sort of be on the edge of the S so that it's looks pretty good. But I think because it's bending that way naturally, I think it'd be better if it was bending the opposite way. So what we're going to do is I'm going to file and place that again so it's straight, and then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to go to edit and transform, and then I'm going to flip it horizontally. So now when I go Command or Control and T for transform, I'm going to bring it over and I'm going to rotate that round, and that curve is sort of naturally following the S a bit better than it was anyway. So now when we Puppet Warp it, it'll look a little bit more natural. Okay, so again, once we've positioned it, we're going to edit and Puppet Warp again, starting off with a pin on the bottom left hand side because I want this part to be fixed, and I'll put another couple as they go, and sort of just wriggle it around just so it's nice. You don't want any too sharp bends unless that's how the tree naturally goes, but we just sort of want to bring that sort of over, and also you have to be careful not to sort of make it look too unnatural. And also, it doesn't matter, you don't have to follow the text exactly, because at the end of the day it is supposed to be a sort of natural looking effect, so that, you know, it doesn't matter if you've got bits sticking out somewhere here. And oh, that one seems to be deciding to go off here somewhere. So once you sort of had a play around and sort of position a bit, you can always come back and finalize the edits. Doesn't seem to be liking my mouse movements at the minute. So once you've sort of got that positioned how you want, we're going to tick that and OK that. So we've got, if we hide the text layer, you can sort of see the outline of the S sort of coming together now, but we've got this bit sticking out the top which we don't really want. So we're going to bring back our text layer, and we're going to create a layer mask on the first tree and sort of just rub out this. So we're going to go into our layers on the left, just check that's the right one, and we're going to hit the layer mask button at the bottom, and we're going to zoom in a bit just so we can see what we're doing, and then we're going to hit the brush tool, which is B, set our default colors, so it's black and white, which is D if you haven't already. And then what we need selected is black, so we can either hit X to switch them around, or you can click and change it to X. Using the brush size, we're going to bring it down a bit using the square brackets on the keyboard, or you can go up into the brush panel here and change the size. And we also want the feathering to be slightly off, so you can hold Shift and do it with the square brackets on Shift, just to change the sort of, so you can sort of have it a bit softer. So I think that's about, it's a little bit too soft actually at the minute, so I'm going to bring it so it's just sort of have a play around so you're happy. Just sort of rub out the edge of the tree there, but it can be a little bit tricky just to get it so it looks natural, and it doesn't, you know, look like it's fading out. It can take a little bit getting used to, but we can dodge and burn it on the edge as well to make it look like it sort of fits in, because you see the edges of the trees goes darker, so we can come in afterwards and sort of burn that in just to make it a little bit better. But we're going to be applying a curves layer eventually to sort of darken this whole thing down. If we go back to our sticks, so that you can see that the sticks are really dark and you can't really tell where the edges of the trees are sort of real or not. So it don't have to be too sort of particular at this stage, but it's once you've had a play around with that. So we're going to zoom back out now, and we're going to sort of repeat this process for the rest of the sticks, but I'm going to sort of speed through it just because you don't need to see me sort of spending hours and hours trying to perfect this. So it does take a little bit of time, it's a little bit tedious, but once you sort of get used to using the puppet warp, it can sort of come together quite quickly. Don't be afraid to use the same trees more than once as well. It's you're warping them in different ways, so they almost look like different trees anyway. And like I said, we're going to be taking the color out, so it sort of looks like the different trees anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about duplications and using the same one. One thing I did on the T was use one that went all the way down to the bottom. So the T, I think I used this one here. So I'm going to place this again, and I'm going to shrink it down. So this one is quite a tall one, so I sort of shrunk it down so that I think I've got this sort of split off going at the bottom of the T. Maybe a little bit smaller actually. I think it was a little bit less than that, so that I had the tip of this one coming just at the top of there. Also on this as well, I rubbed out a couple of branches, so again using the layer mask, I'll rub these out in a sec, but I'll just bring it so that we've got this and it's just going off there. Use the arrow keys as well just to fine tune your positioning. Hit enter, and we're going to bring up the puppet warp tool again, and we sort of click on the places that we want fixed, that we don't want to move as much, so that when we sort of move the main branch it doesn't ruin the whole bottom of the tree. So I'm going to click up here and I want to bring this branch over just a bit, and then we're going to click at the top somewhere and bring that back over to straighten it up. I'm not too worried about this one on the right hand side here. I think it sort of adds to the effect just having a bit of extra branch. I might bring it in just so it's a little bit more subtle, isn't quite as a prominent branch. And also I think I'll bring this so it's not connecting to the S. And then we've got this branch here which I could bring over like this. Again, it's sort of just having a play and see what works. Also getting in other branches, see if they fit well together. Also you can sort of intertwine them as well. So now we're going to across the top of the T, so we're going to bring in another branch. If it decides to do it. And I'm going to bring in, I think it was this one here, and I want these branches to be sticking out of the edge just a bit. So first thing I do is edit, transform and flip vertically, and then rotate this round so that the branches are sort of naturally curving upwards of the T. I'll bring it about there, and then we're going to resize this down. This time I'm not going to be holding shift and just sort of guessing, because you can sort of change the width of the branch a bit just to make it a little bit thicker, but you don't want to overdo it, otherwise you'll sort of distort it and it won't look realistic. So we'll bring it up about here, and you can use the arrows just to nudge it around and just sort of get it positioned about right. Again, we're going to go up to our edit and puppet warp tool, set in a couple of those control points, starting with about 3, and we'll sort of bring this top end round, put another one in here, and we're going to sort of get rid of this afterwards. So sort of bring that in to about there, this one here. I'll see, I was quite happy with that. So we're going to add a layer mask to that layer, and if we're going to zoom in just a bit, get our brush tool with the B, with our square brackets, we're going to make it bigger, and we need black selected as our foreground color so we can rub everything out. And as we get closer, it needs to get slightly harder, so holding shift and square brackets, or the curly brackets, that's going to make the brush slightly harder, or if you want a bit more control, you can go up to the hardness and size options on the brush panel. I'm going to bring it in just to about there. It doesn't have to be too accurate, just so it looks just about right. And we get overlaying this with another tree, so we're going to place again. Let's get this one this time. And this one I want sort of curling upwards, so it goes intertwines a little bit with the eye, and then sort of forms upwards with it. So I want this main trunk to be about there. I'm going to rotate this around just a little bit and leave it like that. Go to edit, puppet warp again, if you can click the button. Add in a couple of those control points, and if we leave one about there, and we're going to bring this branch is all going to go upwards, and bring another one at the top. There we go. And I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. You kind of have to be a bit patient with it. Once you sort of let go of the control points, you have to give it a second just to sort of find out where it is, because it's quite processor intensive to do all this puppet warping. So next thing, I was going to bring this down here, and I think I'm going to rub this out, so I'll just get it so it's forming right in this area, so I can rub this out after, so it's sort of, so I can cut it off about there, somewhere like that. Bring this top up just slightly. Hit enter. I get another layer mask. We're going to come in quite a bit closer this time. Bring up our brush tool, using square brackets again. We're going to change the size, and I want to sort of merge it with this branch here, and I'm going to bring it behind that one, just so it's like that. Actually, I think no, I'm happy with that. That's fine. What I might do is change this mask here so it's not quite a sharp edge. If we can find the right tree, which is this one, click onto the layer mask, and then you can go and edit again, which is why we're using layer mask as opposed to sort of the eraser tool, because that would be a destructive edit, so you wouldn't be able to go back and change all these again, or you wouldn't be able to add any more stuff in like you can do there. Also, what we need to do with these layers is sort of organise them a bit. Once you sort of getting above 7 to 10 layers, you need to start grouping things up just to make sure that you can keep things organised and not losing track of where you are. So first we need to find all the S sticks. So we're just going to go through and hiding these until we find them. So we found one of them. And we're going to Command or Control and G to set a group and just call it S for now. Just make sure we've got that one in there. And we're going to want the other piece of the S, which is here somewhere, I hope. There's that one there. So we're going to drag that into the layer group, and we're going to close that one up. On all the rest of them are going to be T, so we Command and Control G again and change that to T. And we're just going to pre-make some other groups. We need the one for each letter, so for mine it's going to be the I, the C and the K, and then we can order them correctly just so it's spelt right. There we go. So now we're going to speed through this and get this all fitting to letters, and then we'll come back and do some other edits like the snow and change a little bit of the colouring. Okay, so once we've finished laying out our text, the next thing we need to do is take all this colour out of our branches. So we get our black and white layer that we made earlier on the background, and we're literally just going to grab and hold and drag it all the way to the top, and that's just going to make everything monochrome. And also these twigs aren't quite the same, so we've got some dark ones and some lighter ones. So we're going to get our groups that we've got here in the stick, and we need to make a master group of that and just call it sticks or word or whatever. And then we need to add a curves adjustment to that layer, and this is going to clipping mask over the stick group because we don't want it to affect our grass and tree bark behind. So you can either use the clipping mask button there, or you can hold Option or Alt in between this layer and the one below it and just click, and then that'll make it a clipping mask. So we want to drag some of the blacks down. We can add a couple of control points in here just to because we don't want to cut it off completely, otherwise we'll lose all of the detail in the sticks. But something pretty dark, so it looks pretty dark at the minute, but we're going to line it up with a bit of snow and things after, so don't worry too much. And it's also a non-destructive effect, so we can come back and change things and play around. I'm also going to bring in some of the highlights just a bit more, just so we can see what they're doing. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is add in some snow. So what we'll do now is make a new layer. Make sure it's above your adjustment clipping mask as well, because we don't want that to be below, or it needs to be above. We're going to get our fill tool. So if you've still got your gradient selected, hold Shift and G to cycle through, or click and hold and then click your bucket fill. And we want to set our default colors, so you can either click the default, press D on the keypad, or just change it manually. We just want a black, and we're just going to fill that whole layer in. Now we're going to go to filter and then noise, add noise, and we want about 150%. We use a Gaussian distribution, and it needs to be monochromatic, so otherwise we're going to get a lot of color going on. So okay, that also we're going to have to blur this layer, because at the minute it's just white and black, there's no grey scale in between, which we need so we can filter out so it's not quite as busy. So we're going to filter and blur, Gaussian blur, and about 0.6 works for me. It needs to be quite subtle, just to sort of add a few greys in there. Click OK, and then we'll make another curves adjustment above that one. Again, it needs to be clipping mask to the snow layer. We'll double click on this and call it snow, just so we know where we are. Click on the curves, make it a clipping mask, and we're going to bring in these blacks, and it sort of gets rid of all of the most of the noise, just so we've got a little bit of snow there. So bring it in a little bit more, just so it's quite spaced out, and you sort of get this a lot more space, almost like a starry effect going on now. And the next thing we need to do is right click and convert to smart objects, so that we can add a motion blur, but we don't have to make it a smart object, but it just makes it easier so that we can come back and make changes later. So go to filter, blur, motion blur, and the angle I'm using is about -75, distance about 8 pixels, works okay. But as we can see, we've lost quite a lot of the detail now from this blur, so we can go back in this curves, bring back some of these blacks, and add in a bit more white, so you can see if it goes too prominent, there's two sharp edges on the snow, so we're just going to bring that off a bit, maybe take away the blacks, and then we go onto our snow layer and make that screen. And then now we can see if we can hide this layer, we can see we've added in these bits of snow, and depending on how much you like, you can add in some more so it's really snowy, or just sort of bring it in and out. It's quite a cool effect to use on quite a lot of different projects really. So the next thing we're going to add in is we had a little raven. If I go back to my original, you can see I've got this little raven bird perching on the top here, which is obviously optional, but I think it adds to the effect quite nicely. So we're going to file and place, get one of our assets, which is the raven, which this one I made myself, so I'll leave this in the description so you can pick this up. It's just it's almost like a very simple vector drawing of a raven. Doesn't have to be too detailed. So we're going to bring this in and perch him on top of the sea, I think. Sort of tilt him over a bit, and get him to scale, holding shift so that you keep him the same size. I'm assuming it's a him, could be a girl, who knows. And we're going to OK this, and that needs to be above your curves adjustment so that the curves aren't affecting, but obviously we've lost this as a clipping mask now, so it needs to go back out. So now I'm going to add in some brush strokes that goes on the edge of the letter. So if we go back to our original, we can sort of see these little black sort of flares coming off the letters, which sort of help thicken up the letters a bit and make it just that little bit sort of darker, and almost like it's sort of just furthering out of the branches a bit. So we're going to make a new layer, and drag that layer to the bottom of our text so it's underneath. We double click, I'm going to call it Brushstrokes. The brushes we're using are provided by Brush Easy, which is by Rubina119. I'll leave the link in the description so you can download it for yourself, and make sure you leave some comments, and thanks for using them, because they're pretty cool brushes actually. What we go brush panel and then load brushes if you haven't already done it, and click load brushes, and wherever you've saved them in your downloads or whatever. I tend to make a file with all my brushes in, just to keep everything organised so you can add them in and take them away, and it'll add it into the bottom of your brushes. So the main ones I'm going to be using are 496 and I think it's 471, but just going to get an idea of what they look like. They sort of add these flares coming off here. So the problem is that the angle of the brush doesn't work for certain parts of the letters. So if we wanted to add a bit, say onto the top of this K, you've got these edges sticking out either side, which doesn't look very good. So when you get our brush panel on the right hand side, if you haven't already got this on here, same with characters, so you go up to window and then brush, and then I'll bring this up. And what you need to use is this little icon on the side here, where if you can click and hold the arrow, you can sort of change the angle of the brush, just so you can fit it to the different letters. It takes a little bit of playing around. You can also make it thinner and wider using this sort of circles on the side. So we're going to sort of start off, we're going to be using a black colour, and it doesn't have to be 100% opacity as well, which is quite good to sort of use different ones, but you sort of change the brush size. Sometimes you might need to sort of double click, but we're just sort of going to go through and add in a few brush strokes here and there, just to give it that little bit of extra emphasis. So once we've done that, we've sort of added this extra effect on the letters. So if we can hide that, you can sort of see what effect it has, and it sort of emphasises them a little bit, and makes it sort of that little bit more darker style, I guess. Next thing we need to add is the snow, which sort of lies on top of the letters. Again, this is optional, but I think it sort of added a nice sort of Christmassy effect onto the branches there. Also, I've noticed is that I think the colour of the raven should be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to bring the raven so it's below the text layers. So that it's inside the stick group. And that way it gets affected by this curves adjustment that we made earlier to all of the sticks and sort of fits in a bit better. So to make the snow, we're going to go on top of the curves layer, but below our sort of snow foreground. We're going to make a new layer, drag that below the snow, and call this whatever you like, main snow. And we're going to double click on this, and we're going to create a bevel and emboss effect. Now the settings that I'm going to be using for the bevel and emboss, this is sort of give it so it's a shadow, so it looks like a bit more of a 3D kind of look. The depth I'm going to be using is 120. We're going to have a size of 6 pixels, a soften as 5 pixels, and the shadow, which is what darkens it, we're going to make that 80. This we're going to put up to 100, but it doesn't really matter because we're using white anyway, so it can't really get any more brighter in the highlights. So that's not really, doesn't really matter. And your angle should be default to 120 or 30 or this kind of angle, but if not, just sort of set those as well. So if we just bring up our brush, we're going to change our brush back to our default circle, and we need that to be almost on full hardness, but I think it's 75% hardness, so it's got a little bit of softening going on, just to make it not quite as sort of so you can see the edges of the brush. We're going to make the foreground white, and we're going to make sure that our pasty is at 100%. So with our main snow selected, if we can just do sort of like a test brush, I can show you what this effect is going to achieve. So if you just sort of draw this arc like that, you can sort of see that it brings a shadow under the snow. Now it doesn't look too much like snow as it is, but when we get up in the letters, we can sort of see how this is going to affect. And this also main snow needs to be a clipping mask, which I think I got wrong before. So this needs to be a clipping mask on top of the letters so that it doesn't show outside of the letter. So if I could sort of draw this, if I can sort of just draw this on top now, and you can sort of see it going on top of the letters, but we don't want it to affect outside. So as soon as we bring this in as a clipping mask, we can hold Alt or Option and click in between that layer and the curves below. You can see how it only affects the letters now, and it doesn't go outside of that. This effect is probably not the best way of doing snow, but I think it's quite a quick way to do it. Really, snow would go actually, you know, if you wanted to spend a bit more time being a bit more sort of careful about it, you'd make the snow so that it was curving round and wasn't quite following strictly to the letters. But just for the sake of time, I'm just going to be clipping it to the letters and sort of leaving it as this effect. So we're just going to go in amongst the branches and just add in sort of spots here and there. Mainly you want to put it on the horizontal branches, so because snow doesn't really catch on the vertical ones. So if we just kind of go like that, and you can sort of change your so it's sort of curving, have it sort of resting more on certain pieces, like that. And we're gonna just keep going on, keep adding little bits here and there. But it's also important not to completely cover a branch so that you go from one side to the other in white, because otherwise it's just going to make the branch look white, which isn't really effective, because you're not going to see, realistically you'd see a shadow underneath there. So you need to make sure that if you are going to cover the entire branch, that you leave just about the edge so that you can still see the bevel emboss on the snow, like that. So we're just going to keep going around editing these branches and making the brush smaller to get into the cracks a little bit, but it just takes a little bit of time just to get it right. But I'm going to keep going on this, and then we're going to come back once we've finished. Okay, so now we've sort of finished adding in our snow, and if we hide that, you can sort of see the effect. I quite like the just normal without snow. It's also quite a good effect, but you know, if you just want to add that little bit extra, I think it's a nice touch. So there's our finished stick text. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I'd like to see your versions if you post them on YouTube or on my Google Plus page. And please subscribe, and I'll be back next week with another tutorial. Merry Christmas, and see you next time.